The Milky Way galaxy had always been governed by the Galactic Council, a coalition of the most advanced and powerful species from across countless star systems. For centuries, these beings had wielded control over the galaxy, dictating the flow of interstellar politics, commerce, and war. They were ancient, wise, and fiercely proud. Each species on the Council brought its own history of military dominance, technological supremacy, and societal grandeur. For them, might was everything. And, in their eyes, Earth had none of it. Earth, a planet barely noticeable on the galactic map, had only recently been invited into this vast interstellar community. The Council had extended an invitation after observing Earth's technological advancements, small, by galactic standards, and its fledgling space exploration efforts. But despite this gesture, the members of the Council never truly considered Earth to be important. To them, Earth was a quiet planet with a soft species. The humans who inhabited it were diplomatic, more interested in peaceful relations than military power, and their history of warfare seemed like a childish squabble compared to the eons of interplanetary conflict the Council members had endured. The humans' military presence in space was minimal. They lacked the sheer firepower and hardened soldiers that other species had been cultivating for millennia. The Galactic Council was home to warrior species that had fought and won wars across entire star systems. In contrast, Earth's warriors, or soldiers, as they called them, were perceived as weak, unseasoned, and untested on the scale of galactic warfare. Whenever the topic of Earth's military arose, it was usually met with chuckles and dismissive remarks. How could creatures so physically fragile and mentally unprepared compare to species that had been bred for war? But when a crisis loomed, one that threatened the stability of the galaxy itself, Earth's reputation was about to face its ultimate test. A dangerous alien race, known as the Kthrex, had emerged from the dark edges of the galaxy. They were ruthless, swift, and relentless, spreading fear wherever they went. Their violent raids decimated entire star systems, and even the Galactic Council, for all its power, struggled to hold the line. The Council was desperate, and as the Kthrex forces drew closer to the heart of the galaxy, they called for all member planets to contribute forces to the defense. Earth, eager to prove itself as a valuable ally, responded by volunteering a small task force. But when news of Earth's contribution reached the Council chambers, it was met with immediate derision. A handful of human soldiers? It seemed like a joke. The other Council members, especially those from species known for their combat prowess, openly mocked the idea. Earth sending warriors is like sending lambs to the slaughter, one reptilian general sneered. They would be better off staying home. Despite the mockery, Earth's leaders stood firm. The task force, a unit of elite U.S. Marines, was dispatched to join the Allied forces. At the head of this unit was Sergeant Jack Steele Harris, a Marine who had seen more than his fair share of combat on Earth. Though he had never fought an alien enemy, Harris was a battle-hardened leader, known for his unwavering resolve under pressure. His experience, tactical mind, and ability to lead men into the thick of the fight made him the ideal candidate to represent Earth. When Sergeant Harris and his team arrived at the Galactic Council's main military outpost, the reaction from the other species was predictably dismissive. Harris, clad in his traditional Marine gear, stood out among the alien generals who wore elaborate armor and insignia, symbols of their victories across the stars. Harris was calm, his face an unreadable mask of focus, but it was clear from the moment he entered the room that the other generals did not take him or his unit seriously. The Council convened a briefing to plan the upcoming battle against the Kthrex, and Sergeant Harris was invited as Earth's representative. The room was filled with powerful figures, reptilian brutes, towering insectoid warriors, and even psychic beings with formidable mental powers. They boasted of their past victories, flaunting their species' long history of conquest and military might. They made it known that Earth's contribution was insignificant in comparison. One by one, the alien generals stepped forward to demonstrate their species' superiority. The reptilian general who had mocked Earth earlier flexed his massive claws, recounting battles where he had single-handedly torn enemies apart. The insectoid warriors swarmed in perfect formation, a terrifying display of coordination and raw numbers. Even the psychic beings offered a taste of their mental prowess, levitating objects and bending metal with nothing but a thought. It was all meant to send a clear message to Harris and his men: Earth was out of its depth. But Harris said nothing. He stood with his arms crossed, watching the displays of power with the calm detachment of a soldier who had seen it all before. The other generals waited for him to react, hoping to see fear or awe in his eyes. They got nothing. Harris, his jaw set, simply nodded at the end of each demonstration. If the alien generals were trying to intimidate him, they failed spectacularly. When it was Harris's turn to speak, he was brief and to the point. He offered no grandiose claims of Earth's military might, no tales of human conquest. Instead, he spoke of tactics, discipline, and adaptability, qualities that were ingrained in every Marine. He didn't try to match the boasts of the other species, because he knew that wasn't where Earth's strength lay. The other generals were unimpressed. They dismissed his words as empty, the ramblings of a leader who had never faced a true intergalactic enemy. But Harris didn't care. He wasn't there to win their approval. He was there to do what Marines did best: complete the mission, no matter the odds. As the briefing ended and the generals dispersed, Harris gathered his unit. His men, aware of the disdain they faced, were itching to prove themselves. But Harris kept them focused, reminding them of their training and their purpose. They had a job to do, and they would do it the only way they knew how, with precision, determination, and absolute commitment to the mission. The alien generals might not respect them now, but Harris knew one thing: when the battle came, they would. The Kthrex descended like a storm, their ships blotting out the sky as they approached the planet's surface. The ground shook under the force of their landing crafts, and within moments, they were swarming in overwhelming numbers. Massive and relentless, their savage tactics were honed by centuries of unchallenged conquest. They surged forward with no regard for losses, their singular goal: total annihilation. The Galactic Council's forces, who had once prided themselves on being unbeatable, were immediately pushed to their limits. The reptilian soldiers, known for their brute strength, were quickly overrun. Their size, once an advantage, now made them slow and cumbersome in the face of the fast-moving Kthrex. Every time one of them fell, it left a gap in the defensive lines that the invaders exploited without hesitation. The insected swarms, usually flawless in their coordination, found themselves unable to cope with the Kthrex' unpredictability. Their well-ordered formations disintegrated into chaos as they struggled to keep pace with the unrelenting assault. Despite their superior technology and physical prowess, the Council's warriors were losing ground at an alarming rate. Amidst the chaos, Sergeant Jack Harris watched from his vantage point, taking in every detail of the battle. The Galactic Council's forces were crumbling, and if something didn't change soon, the entire planet would fall. Without hesitation, Harris gave the order. His Marines moved with the precision of a well-oiled machine, deploying quickly and efficiently into the heart of the battlefield. The contrast between the Marines and the alien warriors couldn't have been more stark. While the alien forces relied on brute strength and overwhelming numbers, Harris and his men used their training to turn the chaos to their advantage. They didn't need to match the Kthrex in raw power. Instead, they outtaught them. Every movement was calculated, every shot aimed with lethal precision. Harris led from the front, guiding his team through the battlefield with a calm, unshakable focus. He was a man who thrived under pressure, and this was no different. The Marines operated in small, coordinated units, moving in and out of enemy lines like ghosts. They hit hard and fast, striking weak points in the Kthrex ranks before disappearing into cover. The Kthrex, used to opponents who tried to meet them head-on, were thrown into disarray by the Marines' guerrilla tactics. Their savage strength counted for nothing if they couldn't find their enemy, and that's exactly what Harris was counting on. It wasn't just strategy that set the Marines apart, though. The Kthrex, and even the other alien species on the battlefield, had underestimated humanity's sheer resilience. Where other species would have faltered under the brutal conditions, the Marines pushed through with grim determination. Their bodies may have been smaller, their physiology less imposing, but their willpower was unmatched. The Kthrex brought their full fury to bear on the humans, expecting them to crumble as easily as the others, but the Marines stood firm. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the Kthrex were no longer dictating the pace. Harris, with his battlefield experience, quickly recognized weaknesses in the enemy's tactics. The Kthrex were relentless, but they were also predictable. They relied on overwhelming force to win battles, but that meant they were vulnerable to precision strikes that disrupted their coordination. Harris took advantage of this, orchestrating a series of surgical attacks that cut through the Kthrex ranks, leaving them scattered and confused. Harris was more than just a soldier, he was a tactician. He could see patterns that others missed, and he used this to exploit every weakness the Kthrex revealed. While the other species panicked under the pressure, Harris remained cool, issuing orders with the calm authority of someone who had been in the thick of battle more times than he could count. The Marines adapted to every shift in the battlefield, their discipline and mental toughness proving more powerful than any weapon the Kthrex could bring. The Galactic Council, watching from their command posts, could hardly believe what they were seeing. These humans, whom they had mocked and dismissed, were now turning the tide of the battle. The other species, despite their physical advantages, had been outmatched by the Kthrex. But the Marines, those supposedly soft Earthlings, were holding their own through strategy, grit, and sheer force of will. It wasn't brute strength that was winning this fight. It was the human ability to adapt, to think under pressure, and to refuse to give up. Slowly but surely, the momentum of the battle shifted. The once unstoppable Kthrex advance began to falter as Harris and his team continued their relentless assault. Where other forces had failed, the Marines prevailed. The Kthrex, who had entered the battle with complete confidence in their victory, now found themselves on the defensive. Their numbers were still vast, but they couldn't keep up with the relentless precision of the Marine strikes. The Galactic Council's elite warriors, who had once looked down on the humans, now fought alongside them, following Harris's lead. Even the reptilian general who had scoffed at Earth's contribution now found himself depending on Harris's strategy to hold the line. And Harris, ever the professional, didn't rub their earlier mockery in their faces. He was focused on one thing: winning the battle. By the time the dust settled, the battlefield looked nothing like it had at the start. The Kthrex had been pushed back, their once overwhelming numbers reduced to scattered pockets of resistance. The planet, once on the brink of destruction, had been saved. And at the heart of it all were Harris and his Marines, bloody, battered, but unbroken. The Galactic leaders had learned something that day. Strength wasn't just about physical power or advanced technology. It was about resilience, determination, and the ability to adapt under fire. And no one exemplified those qualities better than the humans they had once dismissed. The battlefield was still. What had once been a chaotic, violent clash of forces was now silent save for the occasional rumble of distant explosions. The Kthrex had been driven back, but the victory had come at a high cost. The Galactic Council's forces lay in disarray, many of their elite warriors were either wounded or dead, their once formidable numbers reduced to a fraction of what they had been. Scattered debris and fallen soldiers of different species littered the landscape, a stark reminder of the ferocity of the conflict. But amidst the wreckage, the human task force stood tall. Battered and exhausted, the U.S. Marines had emerged victorious. Their faces were grim, their bodies bruised, but they had survived. They had done what many had deemed impossible. They had fought off the Kthrex, a race that had sent entire star systems fleeing in terror. Sergeant Harris, his armor scuffed and stained, looked over his men with quiet pride. They had been tested in a way few could ever comprehend, and they had prevailed. The Galactic Council's leaders gathered to survey the aftermath, their expressions a mix of disbelief and awe. Only hours before, they had dismissed Earth's warriors as weak, unprepared, and irrelevant. Now, they couldn't deny the truth staring them in the face. The humans had done more than hold their own, they had saved the day. They had succeeded where some of the most advanced and fearsome species in the galaxy had faltered. And at the center of it all was Sergeant Harris, whose calm, unyielding leadership had turned the tide of battle. Among the alien generals, the silence was palpable. The mocking arrogance that had once filled the briefing room was gone, replaced by a grudging admiration. The humans, so easily dismissed before, had proven themselves in the most brutal and undeniable way. And in the quiet aftermath, as the realization of what had just occurred settled in, a newfound respect began to take root. These warriors from Earth were not to be underestimated. The reptilian general, who had been among the loudest critics of Earth's involvement, approached Harris. His massive frame still towered over the human, but the usual sneer was gone from his face. There was a tension in the air as the general stood before him, his pride and ego visibly wounded by the day's events. For a moment, it seemed as though the general might walk away, too proud to admit his earlier misjudgment. But after a long pause, he finally spoke, his deep voice rough with reluctance. "I was wrong," the general admitted, his tone gruff. "I underestimated you, and your warriors. Without you, we would not be standing here now." It wasn't an apology, at least, not in the traditional sense. But coming from someone as prideful as the reptilian general, it was the closest thing to one that Harris was going to get. Harris, for his part, didn't gloat. He didn't need to. He had nothing to prove and no desire to rub salt in the wound. Instead, he simply nodded, his expression as composed as ever. "We were all in this together," Harris replied. "We fought as one. That's the only reason we won." His words, simple but sincere, carried weight. Harris wasn't interested in taking sole credit for the victory. He understood that it wasn't just his men's strength or tactics that had won the day, but the combined efforts of every species that had fought alongside them. This acknowledgement, this refusal to grandstand, only deepened the respect the alien generals now felt for him and his Marines. It was clear that Harris and his soldiers weren't just exceptional warriors, they were professionals through and through. The Galactic Council convened shortly after the battle to discuss what had transpired. The tone in the room was markedly different than it had been before. Where once the Council members had dismissed Earth as a minor player in galactic affairs, now they recognized the truth. Humanity had proven itself as a force to be reckoned with. The Council formally acknowledged Earth's contribution to the defense of the galaxy, granting them a place of honor among the elite military powers. No longer was Earth seen as a backwater planet with weak soldiers. Now, it was recognized as a key player in the galaxy's defense. Sergeant Harris and his Marines were hailed as heroes, their names spoken with reverence across the galaxy. News of their victory spread quickly, and the story of how Earth's soft warriors had outmatched some of the toughest enemies in the galaxy became the stuff of legend. The alien species, who once laughed at the idea of humans being capable warriors, now looked to them with a newfound respect. Earth, once an afterthought in the grand scheme of the Galactic Council's military plans, was now a central figure in the fight to maintain peace and stability. For the Marines, this recognition was hard-won. They had always been prepared to fight, no matter the odds, and now the galaxy understood why. It wasn't their technology, or even their physical abilities that made them formidable, it was their spirit. The Marines' ethos of never backing down, of adapting to any situation, of pushing forward no matter how overwhelming the challenge, was what had carried them through the battle. They embodied resilience, a trait that no amount of alien strength or technology could replicate. As the dust settled and the galaxy began to recover from the battle, Harris took a moment to reflect. For him, this victory was about more than just the defeat of a dangerous enemy. It was about proving something, proving that humanity belonged among the stars. He knew that the galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. But as far as Harris was concerned, that was just the beginning. The Marines had made their mark, and now, it was up to humanity to keep earning that respect, one battle at a time. Before departing, Harris spoke with the galactic leaders one last time. They thanked him for his service, for leading his men with courage and distinction. Harris, ever the Marine, gave them a simple parting message. "Don't mistake our willingness for peace as a sign of weakness," Harris said, his voice steady and unwavering. "We may not be the biggest or the strongest. But if you ever need to be reminded of what we're capable of, just call us. We'll be there." It was a reminder, not just to the Council but to the galaxy as a whole, that humanity was not to be underestimated. They had earned their place among the stars, and the universe would never forget it.